everything. Yet this one man, one person, took their focus off the prize. For the prize wasn't the goods that Jericho had, and surely they had lots of gold and lots of prized possessions that could be used to sacrifice unto the Lord, but that was not the goal. The goal was to destroy. Why? Because the things were accursed. Even though they looked good to the eye, the items that were there in Jericho were accursed. They were offered up to other gods, and they were accursed. And so there was a reason that God wanted no part of them, because they were accursed. Church, when we hold on to the things of this world that are accursed, we're bringing a curse onto ourselves. When we hold on to the things that God has called us to let go of, we are bringing that accursedness, we're bringing that curse upon ourselves, we're bringing that destruction upon ourselves. For we can't say we love God and we please God, and yet we're entangling ourselves with the things of the world. But the things of the world are accursed. They have no value to God. They're worth nothing to God. And because they're worth nothing to God, they should be worth nothing to us. And we ought to destroy those things. We ought to utterly get rid of those things. No matter how good they look on the outside. And sometimes people say, oh, well, I can take this and I can give it to God as an offering. But to obey is better than to sacrifice. Because we can't take the things, the accursed things of the world, and expect to offer them as a sacrifice to a holy God. For He will not accept it. He will not accept it, for that is not the sacrifice that He calls for. But the sacrifice that He calls for is for us to let go of ourselves, to lay ourselves at the altar, to surrender everything that we are. This life that He's given to us is that which He has called us to sacrifice at His altar. For that's the only sacrifice that means anything to Him. That's the only sacrifice that means something to the Lord. For when we think of what God has done for us, we sang that song today, when I think of the goodness of Jesus. I want you to take a minute right now and think of the goodness of Jesus and think about what He's done in your life. Think about the ways that He's kept you. And no doubt we've all done things in our lives that we're not proud of. But think of how God has been merciful unto us. Think about how He's loved us even when we were far off. For the Word says, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. We could search this book from cover to cover, and yet we will find no greater example of sacrifice and of love than that Christ gave life so that we can live. And not when we were proclaiming to be His friend, but when we were yet sinners, when we were still meddling with the accursed things of the world. It's at that point when He called us and died for us so that we can live. So then how can we turn around and take the accursed things of the world and say, Lord, I give this to you? For He will not accept it. He will not accept it, for that is not the sacrifice that He desires. But to obey is better than to sacrifice. And so God is calling us, like He called to Israel, to be obedient, to leave behind the things of the world, no matter how pleasurable they may seem. I don't know why the Lord is allowing me to dwell on this right now, but no matter how good they may seem, no matter how nice they may seem, we need to let go of the things of this world, for they are cursed. And we can't hold on to these things of the world and think that we serve God and please Him with a right heart. Jesus. Oh Lord, let your word come forth this morning, Jesus. We cannot hold on to the things of the world and think that we please God in our actions. For we can only serve one master. We can only give ourselves completely to one master. We either serve God or we serve the world. There is no in-between. There's no riding the fence. There's no, oh, well, I'll come and serve God on, half the week, and the rest of the week I'll just do my own thing. But you cannot serve God and man. But there is a choice to be made. And God, the time comes and God calls us to get up off our face because He's given us the reason for our destruction. He's given us the reason that we haven't been able to progress, the reason that we've died spiritually in a sense. It's because we're holding on to accursed things. Oh, thank you, Jesus. Jesus. What things of the world are we still holding on to in our lives? What things of the world do we still treasure? Do we still hold dear to our hearts? What things are we still holding on to our demise? Dear Jesus, show us this morning, oh God. Show us, oh God, the things, oh God, that have kept us from growing in you, from progressing in you. Oh Lord, and help us to realize that it's not just us, oh God, but it's all those around us, for we are part of the body. And if there's things accursed in our lives, and there are others who will fall because of us. There are others who will be affected because of the accursed things that we hide in our hearts, dear Jesus. For it's interesting to see in this passage that even though Achan was the one who transgressed, he didn't die in the battle. Even though it was Achan who was the one that saw these Babylonian goods and saw that they were pleasing and good and comely. Even though it was Achan in which the transgression was found, Achan wasn't the one that died that day. But there were 36 men who were zealous for God, who were endeavoring to do a work for the Lord. They endeavored to go and take the land as God had called them to do. There are men who no doubt were earnest in their desire and their zeal to conquer this kingdom. But it was those men that died. It was those that were at the front of the battle that died that day. In the church, oftentimes, when there's transgression, we think that everything is okay. We think that because we're still alive, because we're still going, because we're still in the house, we think that things are okay. But we don't realize that in transgression, people lose their lives. It may not be a physical loss of life, and they may even still be in the house and show up Sunday by Sunday, but we don't know by what actions we've caused other people to die in their spirit. For the transgression, even though it was Achan that committed the transgression that day, there are other people who endeavored to do the work and who were going about the work that God had called them to do. It was them that the enemy took over. It was them that the enemy had conquered. It was them that the enemy took their lives. Sometimes we don't realize the implication of what it means to be part of the body. But when we are part of the body, we have a responsibility to each other. For I don't realize that when I'm not doing what I should be doing, I don't realize how I'm affecting my sister. How when I start to slack off and I start to say, you know what, it's not so important for me to get up early and to pray and to read the Word and to pray without ceasing. It's not so important for me to do these things that God has desired me to do. But you know what, I'm tired. I don't feel like getting up this morning. I don't feel like praying. I don't feel like seeking God's face because, you know, I have work to do or I have schoolwork to do or whatever else I have to do. I don't realize that when I slack off and I don't do the things that God has called me to do, I don't realize that there's someone else who's watching me. I don't realize that there's someone else, whether they be in the house of the Lord or even out in the world. I don't realize that there's someone who's watching my lifestyle, who's watching me as I start to shrivel in my spiritual walk, as I start to do things my own way. I don't realize that there are people that are watching me, and they're saying, well, you know, okay, well, if this person's not, you know, if it's not necessary for her to pray without ceasing, and she's still in the kingdom, still doing what she needs to do, then I guess I don't have to. I guess it's not necessary. I guess, you know. We don't realize, church, that there are people who are watching us. There are those who are coming after us, who, even though they may be some of the most vocal critics on your job or some of the most vocal critics amongst your group of friends, we don't realize that they are watching. And when we transgress, when we have transgression within us, and we cover it up, it doesn't go unnoticed.